Okay, welcome everyone here in person, online, and watching later. This week's Parashah portion is Yitro. We begin Exodus 18. It starts in verse 1 and goes through chapter 20, verse 6. And this week is the 17th week of the year. And so the 17 in the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Pei, and the Pei is the one that means mouth. So this parsha is connected with the mouth or speaking. And if you make the letter Pei in Hebrew, it has hidden inside of it the bait, which hints at the house. Sorry. So Yah is speaking to his house or his bride in this portion. And this is one of the shortest parashas. And even though it's short, it contains a lot of information. So before we begin, I sort of got a question for everybody because this will come up in this teaching is, do you believe the scriptures will contradict each other? Okay. If they do, then which one's right? Yeah, I mean, that's the question, to think about. If they do, which one's right? And then, because in this portion, we're going to see there are some contradictions.
Was the very earliest writings.
Yeah. Did y'all hear him?
And see what they,
No,
I cannot.
Okay. He was just saying, a lot of times he goes by what is the earliest writings, and that would be the one that he tends to hold with.
or Deuteronomy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or he says,
Yeah.
or Deuteronomy. So, yeah,
Because
because of what happened. Yeah.
Deuteronomy, and more than
More than the,
24.
more than the other ones of the Torah. So, and that's the question, because, even if we're looking at, because sometimes there's a contradiction between what we read in the Tanakh or the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then how do we address that? But this one we're going to see is within the books of the Torah that there are some contradictions. So how do we address those? So keep that in mind, as we go through this, because we will touch on some of those. So, like I said, this parsha is one of the shortest, and it's named Yitro, or after Jethro. And it's one of the few parshas that we have named after a person, because most of the time it's going to be, one of the first words of the portion. But like Sarah is got named after Sarah, Noah, and this one is Yitro, so it's named after a person. So, and that's unusual. And so it's like a flag waving in our faces. There's something important that we need to take notice of. And, if you think about it, Yah is speaking to his bride here. Why would he call this portion, or why would this portion then be called Yitro? Because this is where he's speaking to his bride. He's giving them the Torah. He's giving them, their wedding contract. And why wouldn't it be called Moshe? Because Moshe is the one receiving it. But instead, we see it named after Moshe's father-in-law. Thoughts on that? Everybody's like, no clue. Something to think about. But okay, so, and a lot of it I think goes with, again, the meanings of the names. Yeah, that's right. Eddie was saying, he wasn't even really a true follower of the Torah. So when we think about Yithro's name, Yithro means abundance. Okay. And, when you think, when we look about who is Yithro, then he's a Midianite. We know he's, Moshe's father-in-law. If we go to Exodus 18 and verse 1, it says, now Yithro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard about all that God had done for Moshe and for Israel, his people, and how Yah had brought Israel out of Egypt. Okay, so here we see this is his father-in-law, and he's a Midianite. So, first thing is, who were the Midianites? We got to go back to Genesis 25. And Genesis 25 and verse 1 says, Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah, and she bore him Zimron, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Yishbak, and Shuach. So the Midianites are the descendants of Abraham through Keturah. Okay, so they were sons of Abraham.
Right.
But, you know, what's interesting, you think about, well, they're sons of Abraham. So they must have known the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
But yet, when you start looking at where they were, because, you know, where these people settled, and you look at the archaeological finds in the area of Timnah, which is where the Midianites were, you find relics. The archaeologists have found relics of all these other gods. So, like today, you know, you got to think about, well, they knew at one time the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Did they mix their worship and start, you know, worshiping other gods as well as Yah? Or, you know, like sometimes we've seen people, you know, say, oh, well, I'm worshiping God. And then they take this festival or this thing that is very pagan and they slap the name of God on it and want to bring it into it and say, okay, this is how we worship God now.
Well, and what do they do now?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the way they do now. So, I mean, it's really weird to think about, because when you think about Abraham, you would think about the Midianites. Yeah, they were pagan, but they didn't really start out to be pagan. They were Abraham's sons. So they knew his God. So it ended up that, you know, they eventually mixed and mixed and mixed.
Who was Abraham's wife? What was her name?
Keturah.
Who was she?
Who was she? Yeah.
So,
She was an African. Yeah, you know, because this was after, what was it? Was she Egyptian? Some believe that she was, some believe that she wasn't there. So yeah, Ethiopian.
yeah, that's what
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's, you know, well, because she's African, because she is African, because it's, you know, this was when and we got Abraham and Hagar, yeah. Mm-hmm. Keturah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah. And so now we've got, you know, that's something to think about, is how things change. You know, he didn't maybe start out that way, but the mixing, you can see how that very easily influenced. And within a couple of generations, it's now already turned over into full paganism. So
They had 11 children.
they had, mm-hmm.
And two,
Well, I know Ishmael does,
we talked about
or the
before,
12 sons.
having multiple wives.
Yeah, having multiple wives.
You know,
Well, this was after Sarah died that he took Keturah. Yeah.
you know what?
Yeah.
These men of God, even after this.
Yeah. And that's true. He was just saying that sometimes, you know, when you see these multiple wives, even though this one, Keturah, was taken after Sarah's death, that you see there were a lot of issues that come up, like, you know, with Jacob and all of, you know, with his wives and the issues that come up there. So, okay, let's go back to Exodus chapter 18 then. So, no, not looking for another. Let's skip down a minute, because I wanted to look at this, because if we go down to verse 10 and look at what it says here. Verse 10. Yitro said, "Blessed be Yah, who has rescued from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh, who has rescued the people from the harsh hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that Yah is greater than all the other gods because he rescued those who were treated so arrogantly. And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices. And Aaron came with all of the leaders of Israel to share the meal before God with Moshe's father-in-law. So here we see that Yitro says, blessed be Yah who rescued you. And he says, well, wait a minute. He's going to bring offerings to Yah. So Yitro knew the name of Yah, and he brought offerings, a burnt offering, an olah, and a zavak, a sacrifice, and it's, what is believed here is taught that Yitro is actually now putting away his pagan ways, and he's truly crossing over to a life of following Yah. So, sort of hints that, yeah, he knew who Yah was before, but he mixed his worship, and now he's realizing this is truly the one God. And he said, yeah, he knew how to do them. So, okay, so going back up to verse 2, because I just wanted to skip down there. Okay, so Exodus 18 and verse 2, it says, after Moshe had sent away Zipporah and her 2 sons, Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, had taken them back. And the name of the one son was Gershom, for Moshe had said, I have been a foreigner in a foreign land. Because Gershom means ger, means a foreigner, and sham means there. So he was a foreigner there. And 18:4, the name of the other was Eliezer, my God helps, because the God of my father helped me by rescuing me from Pharaoh's sword. And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, brought Moshe's sons and his wife to him in the desert where he was encamped at the mountain of Elohim. So we see here Moses, his wife, and his sons, Zipporah and the sons, Gershom and Eliezer, have been in Midian. Where they learn, they're probably learning the ways of the Midianites, and why was she sent away from Moshe? We don't really know. I know some have said that, well, it was like Moshe divorced her, and another thought is the protection, because remember after going back to Egypt, and he was confronting Pharaoh, you remember she circumcised their son, and she calls, Moshe a bloody bridegroom there. And, many, have taken that to mean that, oh, well, he's going to be bloody because he's going back and he's going to fight Pharaoh. It's going to be a bloody massacre. And that, it was very dangerous to be married to Moshe. And that, we don't know for sure, but we do know that whatever the reason that Zipporah and the sons were sent back to Midian with her father for a time period. And, now we see them reuniting. And so to think about, Moshe and Aaron are leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, but Moshe's own sons wasn't even a part of the Exodus. That's weird to think about, that, they weren't even a part of it. So yeah, there was redemption in that. Okay. So let's see. No, let's see what else that said. Sorry, got distracted. I'm going back to the name of the parasha because Yitro. It comes also from the root yater, which means a remainder or excess or remnant. Because remember, if you've got an abundance of something, like if you're making a shirt and you've got an abundance of material, what do you have after you made that shirt? A remnant or a part left over. So with that meaning, there's also the connection that if you've got a remnant, then you've got extra. You've got something that's not wiped out or exterminated. And if we think about how this connects back to the 17th letter of the parasha, that, this Hebrew letter, that of speaking to the bride, that Yah is not only speaking to the bride, but he's speaking to the remnant, the part that, he's going to maintain, that aren't going to be wiped out. And, in scripture, there's prophecies about the return of the remnant. And I'll just give you two of them. You can turn there if you want. I'll just read them quickly. Isaiah 10 and verse 21 says, a remnant will return, the remnant of Yaakov, to the mighty God. And in Jeremiah chapter 23 and verse 3 says, I myself will gather what remains of my flock from all the countries while I've driven them. Okay, what remains? Well, that's the remnant. And bring them back to their homes, and they will be fruitful and increase in their numbers. So again, that's another hidden meaning within the name of this portion, is that he's speaking to his remnant. He's speaking to those that he's going to bring back to him. He's speaking to those that he's going to gather together, especially in the last days, and going to be fruitful and increase. So, and another meaning within the name is, if you look at Yitro, it can be read as two different words, the yod, and tur, which is to search out. So you've got the yod, which is, if you put that at the beginning of a Hebrew word, it's a prefix that means he will. Okay. And then you've got tur, which means search out. And then you've got the Bob at the end for Yitro, which means his. So he will search out his own. So within the name of Yitro, he's talking about he's going to search out his own. Well, he's speaking to his bride. So what is he going to do? And in Jeremiah chapter 17, in verse 10, it says, I, Yah, search the heart. I test the inner motivations in order to give everyone what his actions and conduct deserve.
That shows you action.
Mm-hmm.
God, that's what he judges us on.
Yeah.
Our action, how we walk, how we talk, how we speak, how we treat others. Action.
Yeah.
My dad always said, actions speak louder than words. You can say you're a great Christian. You can say you love me. You can say you love God. But
And
what is your action?
It's about
what
your
is your
actions.
fruit?
That's how he judges
What
us.
does your
It's
fruit
about
show?
how we walk out our
What
life
does your
and
fruit
how
show?
what
Even
we're
though
doing
we're
with
not
our life.
perfect,
What
we're
does
all
our
gonna
fruit show there?
mess up.
And that he said that his dad had told him it's not about what you say, but it's about how you walk it. You walk it out. And to think about, that's all within the hidden name of Yitro, is that he's talking to us, his bride, and he's saying, I'm going to search you out. I'm going to search your heart. I'm going to test your motivations. I'm going to see your actions. The version that I read there okay. And then, well, let me look at that one, because I want to just see if I wanted to read it in another version here. No, okay. The other verse I wanted to look at this is the one I wanted to look in a different version. It's in Psalms 26 and verse 2. He says, examine me, Yah, test me, and search my mind and heart. Okay. And if you look at that verse in the Hebrew, what is interesting, because, that's the way it reads it in the complete, is search my mind and my heart. King James says, examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my reins and my heart. And when you look at, that's what I said, when you look at that verse in the Hebrew, that word that's translated as mind or reins there is actually kilyah in Hebrew, which is Hebrew, the kidneys. So, and it's actually the word for kidneys here instead of that. It's your kidneys in your heart. Well, you think about Your kidneys and your liver are organs that work together to filter the blood in order to purify it. And, in this, version, the one I read it in complete, it says to search my mind. They translate it as mind. And it's really that Yah is, he's testing your insides. He's testing those things that purify. Are you being purified? He's testing us so that, our heart, our mind, so that we would be purified. And then, you think about,
It goes from your heart to your kidneys to your liver.
Mm-hmm. So, well, that would be all of it.
If you have a bad heart,
Yes.
it's going to affect
your kidneys and your
really
liver.
bad. You got bad kidneys, it's going to affect your liver.
Mm-hmm.
So it all coincides.
Yeah. And you think about, are we being tested? Are we being, I think most of us here in this room are being tested. I mean, in some way or another,
Because I'll tell you, when I was living for God, I didn't have, the fight I have now.
Yeah. He was just saying, when he wasn't living for God, he didn't have the fight that he has now. I mean, yeah. Huh? Eddie. Yeah, Eddie.
When I lived for God, I didn't have, I just lived carefree, like I wanted.
Yeah.
Just everything was dancing through the tulip.
And it doesn't mean
problems, but now you have a battle.
And he's just talking about the battle that you have. It's not just, no, it's all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But you're going to confront those things. And why are we confronting those things? It's to purify us. A lot of times.
Why does the devil do what he does?
Yeah.
Why does say?
Or is it Yah allowing it?
If you're a true believer, you got Yah, and he hates Yah.
And he's just saying a lot of times, why are these things happening? Sometimes it's because, Yah allows it and he wants to test us and prove us like Job. And other times it is that, Hasatan is, knows that you have Yah in your heart and he is wanting to, get you to hates that. He wants to get you to walk away from it. So if you bring them, trials and tribulations and tests and things and put before them, then hopefully they'll turn away from it. And sometimes people do. Sometimes they go through a trial or test or tribulation, they'll walk away. Yeah. Jack was just saying too that, think about, the scripture that says that the enemy, comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And that, here you are a believer and Yah, and he's trying to come and steal and kill and destroy that which you have. So, another thing that I think sticks out with me in this first part is, in verse 5, Exodus 18 and verse 5, we see that he brought Moses, his son, and his wife to him in the desert where he was camped. He's camped at the mountain of God. So verse 5 tells us where he is. Okay, this mountain of God is Mount Sinai, right? But if we go back to Exodus chapter 17. Exodus chapter 17, look at verse 1. Okay, we're going to start there. The whole community of the people of Israel left Sin Desert, traveling in stages as Yah had ordered, camped at Rephidim. There was no water for them to drink. So we see they're here at Rephidim. The people quarreled with Moshe, demanding, give us water to drink. But Moshe replied, why pick a fight with me? Why are you testing Yah? However, the people were thirsty for water there and grumbled against Moshe. For what did you bring us up from Egypt, to kill us, our children, and our livestock with thirst? And Moshe cried out to Yah, what am I to do with these people? They're ready to stone me. And Yah answered Moshe, go on ahead of the people and bring with you the leaders of Israel. Take your staff in your hand, the one you used to strike the river, and go. I will stand in front of you there on the rock in Horeb to strike the rock, and water will come out of it so the people can drink. And Moshe did this in sight of the leaders of Israel. So here, back in chapter 17, before chapter 18, we see that the children of Israel are at Rephidim. Why is that important? Because where is Rephidim? Nope. He says, I'm going to strike, look at verse 6. I'm going to strike the rock there and bring forth water from this rock in Horeb. Horeb is the mountain of God. That is the same mountain that is Mount Sinai. It's just a different name for it. So when we see where they're at in chapter 17, they're already at this mountain in chapter 17, but we read chapter 18 and we see they're just arriving there. Okay. Nope, that's order. It's not written in chronological order. We read it like it's written. We read it like it's in chronological order. It is, what happens in chapter 17 and 18. And then we go over to chapter 19. Let's go flip over to chapter 19 a minute. Okay. Okay. Chapter 19, verse 1. Okay. And the third new moon, after the children of Israel had their exodus from the land of Egypt, on that very day they came into the Sinai desert, for they were departed from Rephidim and they were Mount Sinai and camped in the desert. So we see that this is when they first come in there. So this is chapter 19 is when they very first arrive. In 17 and 18, we see they're already there. So it's like they're out of order. So we have to remember that when we're reading those scriptures, that one is it's not written in chronological order here. We read it like, oh, they went from this to this to this. But when you start really breaking it down, 17 and 18, they were already there. 19, we see he's flashing back to when they first arrived. Okay. Okay. So going back to Exodus chapter 18, and I'm going to start in verse 13 now. Oops, sorry. The following day, Moshe sat to settle disputes for the people, while the people stood around Moshe from morning until evening. And when Moshe's father-in-law saw that all he was doing to the people, he said, "What is this that you're doing to the people? Why do you sit there alone with all the people standing around you from morning until evening?" And Moshe answered his father-in-law, "It is because the people come to me seeking God's guidance. And whenever they have a dispute, it comes to me. I judge between one person and another, and I will explain to them God's laws and teachings." And Moshe's father-in-law said to him, "What you're doing isn't good. You will certainly wear yourself out, not only you yourself, but those people here with you as well. It's too much for you. You can't do it alone by yourself. So now listen to what I have to say, and I will give you some advice, and God will be with you. You should represent the people before God, and you should bring them their cases to God. You should also teach them the laws and the teachings and show them how to live their lives and what work they should do. But you should choose from among the people competent men who are God-fearing, honest, and incorruptible to be leaders in charge of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Normally, they will settle the disputes and they should bring the difficult cases, but ordinary matters they should decide for themselves. In this way, it will make it easier for you to share the load. Okay. And then it says, if you do this and God is directing you to do it, you will be able to endure. And all these people too will arrive at their destination peacefully. And Moshe paid attention to his father-in-law's counsel and did everything that he said. Now, and you think about, did you think about, here's a man who spoke directly with Yah, Moshe, and he's taken somebody else's advice. A Midianite at that. And so why would he take the advice of someone who was a pagan priest? Is it because Yitro became a believer? Was it because that Yitro was like a father figure to Moshe.
Probably.
Right.
That's where he stayed in the wilderness.
Yeah, he stayed in the wilderness. Yeah, it makes you wonder though to think about that. This is a man who spoke directly with Yah, and then, but yet he's listening to someone who's considered a pagan, in his advice. Or is it because he was just his father-in-law? Is he, being respectful of him? Okay.
Definitely find somebody who is maybe versed in a lot of things because he was a priest of Midian.
Yeah.
He was very much aware of how you handle
Terry's
diplomatic or
Yeah.
political type of issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terry is just saying that,
Government.
this was a man that was a priest of Midian. He probably had, I guess, experience dealing with diplomatic issues, and Moshe's listening to him. And common sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go somewhere else though. Let's look at something else. Okay. Let's go to Numbers chapter 11 a minute. Okay. Numbers 11 and verse 9 is where I'm going to start. Okay. When the dew settled on the camp during the night, and manna, man, came with it, Moshe heard the people crying, family after family, each person at the entrance to his tent. And the anger of Yah flared up violently, and Moshe too was displeased. And Moshe asked Yah, why are you treating your servant so badly? Why haven't I found favor in your sight so that you put the burden of this entire people on me? Didn't I conceive this people? Did I conceive this people? Was I their father so that you can tell me carry them in your arms like a nurse carrying your baby to the land you swore to your ancestors, where I'm going to get meat to give to this entire people? Because they keep bothering me with their crying and saying, give us meat to eat. I can't carry this entire people by myself alone. It's too much for me. If you're going to treat me this way, then just kill me outright. Please, if you have any mercy toward me, don't let me go on being this miserable. Okay, look at the next part. What does your version say in verse 16? The Lord said to Moses, bring me 70 of the leaders of Israel, people you recognize as leaders and as officers of theirs, and bring them to the tent of meeting and have them stand there with you. I will come down and speak with you there, and I will take some of the spirit which rests on you and put it on them, and they will carry the burden of the people along with you so that you won't carry it alone yourself. Okay, but wait a minute. Who just said that bring the people and they're going to help do that? Yeah. But we just read in Exodus that it was Jethro that said it. Okay. Go to Deuteronomy. This is what I'm talking about, the contradiction. Was it Jethro or was it? Yeah. Okay. Deuteronomy chapter 1. Okay, verse 6. Yah spoke to us in Horeb, another name for Mount Sinai, and he said, you've lived long enough by this mountain. Turn, get moving, go to the hill country of the Emori and all the places near there in the Arabah, the hill country of Shephelah and the Negev, and by the seashore, the land of the Canaanite and Lebanon. As far as the great river, the Euphrates, I have set the land before you. Go in and take possession of the land that Yah swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and their descendants after them. At that time, I told you, you were too heavy of a burden for me to carry alone. Yah, your Elohim, has multiplied your numbers so that there are as many of you today as there are stars in the sky. May Yah, the Elohim of your ancestors, increase you yet 1,000-fold and bless you as he has promised you. But you are burdensome, bothersome, and quarrelsome. How can I bear it myself alone? Pick for yourselves from each of your tribes men who are wise, understanding, knowledgeable, and I will make them heads over you. And you answered me, what have you said would be a good thing for us to do? So I took the heads of the tribes, men wise and knowledgeable, and made them heads over you, leaders in charge of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens, and officers tribe by tribe. And at that time, I commissioned your judges to hear cases that arise between your brothers and judge you fairly between a man and his brother and the foreigner who is with him. You are not to show favoritism when judging, but to give equal attention to the small and to the great, no matter how a person presents his help. Don't be afraid of him, but the decision is Elohim's. And if the case is too hard for you, bring it to me and I will hear it. I will also give orders at that time concerning all the things that you were to do.
Two times it said that y'all.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, because it's in Deuteronomy.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
look for because it's y'all. Because I trust Deuteronomy. I trust them all,
Mhm.
but Deuteronomy more than the rest of them.
Yeah. And he
When
was
it says it.
like Terry and Eddie both were just saying is that, you know, you've got two times that it looks like Yah is saying that he did it. And then one time Yitro is saying that he did it. And Eddie was saying, well, he would trust the two times and especially Deuteronomy over the other. So, and, you know, as I said that, you've got in Exodus. So which one is it? You know, that's the question you got to really think about. How do you reconcile that? Yeah. Yep, and I'm going to bring that up a little bit later. Yeah, and he's talking about this study on Deuteronomy. I will mention that a little bit later in my notes. But so let's keep going. So here we got Moshe is setting up a judicial system over the people, and you know it's interesting to think about what he says that these judges are going to be. They're going to have to know and follow the Torah. They should be capable men. That's the word hayil, which is strength. So they've got to be men of strength, but it's not just physical strength, but spiritual strength. They've got to fear Yah, and it says that they have to be men of truth. In looking at Exodus 18, it also says they basically hate profit, that they can't be bribed or bought with money or influence. I mean, just think about it. Can you imagine if our world today had judges that were held to those requirements? Yeah, it's true. That's why we're in the shape we are. We've got judges. System.
Is so corrupt.
Yeah.
And God talks specifically about the judge.
Yeah.
How you judge people, real people.
I mean, you think about it, because he says you should know and follow the Torah. They should be men of strength, spiritual strength.
Yeah.
They should fear Yah.
Yeah.
They should be men of the truth. Well, what is truth? Psalms 119, 142 says that Torah is truth. Okay, they got to hate profit, and they can't be bribed or bought with money or influence. Oh. So, I mean, hey, yes, definitely.
That's all it is.
So,
money and power.
Another thing that stuck out with me, I'm just gonna look at this Exodus chapter 18, and I'm gonna. Is there anything you see in Exodus 18 that sort of jumps out that's repeated? I'll just read a few of them and see if y'all get it. Okay.
Well,
Exodus chapter 18. Okay. Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moshe's father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moshe and for Israel, his people, how Yah had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moshe had sent away his wife Zipporah and her two sons, Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, had taken them back. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, brought Moshe's son and his wife to him in the desert where he was camped at the mountain of God. He sent word to Moshe, I, your father-in-law, Yitro, is coming to you with your wife and your two sons. Moshe went out to meet his father-in-law, prostrated himself and kissed him, and then after inquiring after each other's welfare, they entered the tent. Moshe told his father-in-law all that Yah had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the hardships they had suffered while traveling, and how Yah had rescued them. You seeing something repeated? A word?
Yeah, you already heard all that.
Yeah, but there's a word that keeps being repeated.
let's see. Father-in-law.
Father-in-law, yeah. Think about, why did he have to keep saying Yitro and Moshe's father-in-law? Why didn't he just say Yitro or he? Or, why did he have to keep saying father-in-law? And when you look in this, and I read, a few of those passages in verse 1, verse 2, verse 5, verse 6, verse 7, verse 8, verse 12, two times in verse 12, 14, 15, 17, 24, and 27 all have father-in-law repeated every time. It's repeated 13 times just in this part. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we think about, okay, well, wait a minute. If we see a word repeated, usually it's repeated once or twice, and it is, Yah's trying to get us to look at something, But this is repeated 13 times. So what's he trying to show us? Yeah. The only thing I thought of with 13 is 13 in Hebrew is actually the word ahava, love.
Hang on.
I am too. Ahava, love.
So,
A-H-A-V-A-H. Ahava,
and that means
love.
Love.
Okay. And so Yah is displaying his love in the fact that Yitro, who was considered a Gentile, was brought into the covenant and made part of the family. He was part of the remnant. That's what I see in it. And that he's really emphasizing to Moshe that he is, because when you look at that word hoten for father, for in-law, it is being a part of the covenant. And that here he is, that he was considered this Gentile, and now he's being brought in part of the covenant. Yah is displaying his love for those that were outside, that anybody is welcome in as long as you do the covenant. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you were born, Egyptian, the royal, line or whatever. Anybody that wanted to come in is welcome in as long as you follow Yah's covenant, his command. I mean, do y'all see anything different? I don't know. I mean, that's just what stuck out to me with being 13.
I just was thinking about Moses and his relationship to Pharaoh prior to him being sent away. There was a definite relationship there to that Pharaoh. I mean, of course, Pharaoh died. Pharaoh didn't know him, but there was this respect that he had for Pharaoh. Well, that, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but Moshe would have had the same type of respect and everything for his father-in-law.
Yeah. Because it says to honor your father and your mother. And even though that is a father-in-law, he is likened to a father to him. Yeah, he's showing that love to his father-in-law. He's displaying that. Yeah. Yep. And he's accepted the covenant. Yeah. So, and he was just making the connection there too with Moshe, being growing up in Pharaoh's house, and that Pharaoh, he looked at that Pharaoh as being part of a father, and he displayed love toward him. So, but
when Yitro brought Moses' attention about what he was doing wasn't good, so he was listening to, like you said, his father-in-law, he considered his father. So, whatever word said, be obedient to your parents.
Well, it says to honor your father and mother. Yeah. So it says to honor them. So then that is, what is really honoring, that.
If Yitro is as teshuvah to Yah, then does he not hear the words of Yah?
Yeah, that's true. He's a good point.
So therefore, the thing that he said to
him, it would have been
Yah would have shared with him.
Yeah.
To share with Moses.
He just made a good point. He was just saying that, if Yitro really did teshuvah or, repent and come to Yah, did he not hear Yah's words too? And then know that this is what Moshe should be doing. And he's in his advice is giving advice to his son-in-law. He's saying, okay, Yah's saying to do this. Well, hearing test it out. Cause he even tells him to go and see, is this not what Yah said to do? So that's a good point. So
then
they all three together. Yeah.
like a cord,
Cord that, yep, could not be broken. Yep, that they were all in agreement there. Okay, so let's keep moving on and let's go to Exodus chapter 19. Okay, in verse 1, in the 3rd month after the people of Israel had left the land of Egypt, the same day they came to the Sinai desert. And after setting out from Rephidim and arriving at the Sinai, they set up camp in the desert there in front of the mountain. Israel set up camp. And Moshe went up to Elohim, and Yah answered him from the mountain, "Here is what you are to say to the household of Yaakov, to tell the people of Israel. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will pay careful attention to what I say and keep my covenant, then you will be my own treasure from among all the peoples, and all the earth is mine. And you will be a kingdom of Kohanim for me, a nation set apart. These are the words you are to speak to the children of Israel." And Moshe came and summoned the leaders of the people and presented them with all these words that Yah had ordered him to say. And all the people answered as one, "Everything Yah has said, we will do." And Moshe reported the words to the people of Yah. Okay, so here, again, we've got the timing of this. It's the 3rd month. And if we think back when they left Egypt, it was the 1st month because of Eve. You remember Passover, and then they left at the 15th. Okay, so it would have been a month and a half after them leaving Egypt that now they are here at Mount Sinai. Okay. And then in verse 6, it says, that the children of Israel are going to be a kingdom of priests. Well, that's the same thing that we see referenced in the New Testament, in the Brit Hadashah. If we go over to Revelation chapter 1, and I'm going to go to verse 5, it says, "And from Yeshua the Messiah, the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, and the ruler of the earth's kings, to him who loves us, who has freed us from our sins at the cost of his blood, who has caused us to be a kingdom," that is a priest for God, his Father to be glory, and to him be the glory and the rulership forever and ever. Amen. And so, this is just one place that he's called us to be a kingdom of priests. And even in Revelation chapter 5 and verse 10, he says, "You made them into a kingdom for God to rule, Kohanim to serve him, and they will rule over the earth." Okay, so again, you think about being a kingdom, a priest is not something that was new in the New Testament. It's back in the Tanakh. It was there at the beginning that they were going to be a kingdom of priests. And, 2, it's, here he's calling all of them to come up. And this is a love story. This is their wedding. They come out of Egypt. They are a free people, because a lot of people say, oh, when you're doing the Torah, then you're getting yourself in bondage and slavery. You're putting yourself under the law and you're being a slave to it. But he didn't give it to them when they were a slave. He waited till they were free to give them the Torah. And they had the choice to choose to show that they love him.
Well, anything God is giving a believer that loves him is supposed to be a lifestyle of how you live every day.
Yeah.
That's what it, that's.
He's
that's what it
just
is.
saying that
A
should be a lifestyle of how you live every day. Yeah.
That's your witness.
It's your witness. Yeah. It's your
You know,
witness,
your
how you live your life. And you think about it.
Not perfect, we ain't gonna be perfect.
Well, okay,
That's up.
you think about, okay, when you go someplace and whether, I don't know, just wherever you are, is there a difference? Can people know by how you act that you are a believer? That's what I'm saying. You think about your life. Can you think about when you go into a restaurant, when you go to a movie theater, when you go wherever? Can people around you, or do you look just like the people around you? You know, do you act like them? That's what I'm saying. Do you act just like the people around you? Do you look like they look and they can't tell the difference?
You do things with it.
Yeah.
Sooner or later you will.
Yeah. And that's the thing that we should be,
Yes.
or you're going to be like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you're acting different than they are, if you're, you know, because that's what I'm saying. You think about that. We are to be set apart. We're to be different. It's not, even though, yeah, we're going to act differently in our words. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we sound? Yep. How do we talk? How do we speak? Yep. Mm-hmm. Jack's just talking about the guy he used to work with, and he stopped and saw him.
When these other ones can't come up, they cuss
And at work, the guy asked him, he's like, yeah. At work, he said, you know, why is it that when something gets bad or something, these other guys, they cuss and whatever. And he says, you don't do that. You're different. What is it? What is it about you? And that he got to witness to this man because of that, you know, and that's the thing. That's what it should be, is that should be that no matter where we are, whether we're in the line in the grocery store, getting behind somebody in traffic that won't turn. So, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, we should be different. Yeah. We should be different. And that's, you know, they should be able to recognize there is a difference with us. So they're just laughing about that now because
we all
do make mistakes. Yeah. Yes, we all do.
But
our lifestyle, that's true. Yes.
Sometimes I get mad, go in the car, so, and other times.
He's just talking about, you know, sometimes you can get mad and you can say stuff or whatever, but is that your lifestyle? Are you consistently doing that? Are you consistently walking that out? If that's how you are, then no, it's, you know, that's what's in your heart. You got to really look at it. And that's the whole part of sometimes why Yah allows these tests to come upon us, is because he's wanting to root out all of that junk in our heart and get it out of us. So, and notice verse 5 there. I like this one too, where, you know, this is one that's got one of.
Well, sometimes I would use a biblical word.
I know what you're talking about. Okay. So in verse 5, Exodus 19, verse 5. Now, if you will pay careful attention to what I say, and notice this is an if. You got to do this and keep my covenant. Then you will be my own treasure from among all the peoples, for the earth is mine. So it's, you know, we want to just, you know, say, oh, well, we're his special treasure, or, oh, we're blessed because we're, you know, but he says, if you do this and if you obey my commands, then you're going to be my special treasure. And the word that I like here is the word that's, you know, for treasure is segulah. Okay. Segulah is often translated as a possession or a treasured possession, but it's more than just a treasure. It's, yeah, it's not just a possession. It's not God just saying, oh, you're mine. It is a treasure, like a jewel. It's something that is highly valued. It's worthy of great honor. And so look at what Yah is saying. He's saying, if you choose to obey me, then you're going to be like that jewel, that treasure that I'm putting extreme value on, that I am actually, cherishing and loving and don't want to part from it. And that's what he's saying that he's going to do. If you think about, what do you do with your most treasured possessions? You hold them close to you. You're going to hide them. You're going to protect them. You're going to, you're going to love it. You're going to, sometimes those treasured possessions, you might take it out and you look at it and like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, what I'm saying? It's something. And that's what Yah is saying that he does with us.
That's
Yeah.
what it said right there.
And Terry was just saying that's why Hasatan really hates us so much, is because Yah is saying that if you obey me, that's how I'm feeling about you. That's what I'm doing with you. You are my treasured possession. You're my segalah. And that, think about this is what Yah is telling us in this marriage covenant, and that's what I said earlier is that think about Israel is a free people. They have a choice. They can decide to choose Yah or not. Yah doesn't force you to choose him. No matter how much you want to, he gives you a choice. You have free will. He, no matter how much we want, our children or whatever, or parents want to force you can't force it on somebody else. They have to want to choose you.
To think about it, that's why a lot of people, I've been asked the question, do you believe in predestination?
Yeah.
And I say, that's a tough deal because God says, I knew you when you was in your mother's womb. And because God is in the past, present, and the future, he knows who's going to come to him and he knows who's not going to come to him.
Right.
Chapter 1,
Exactly.
vessels that are made unto honor and vessels who are made unto dishonor.
Yeah, and he was just he was saying that there's in Romans it talks about there's vessels who are made for honor and then vessels that are made for dishonor too. So
but there is still a chance for those who are made under dishonor. I don't know.
No,
Well,
yeah.
I'm
No, we're not the creators, right?
If that person your neighbor,
Yeah,
is ever
Yah
gonna see
knows.
them.
Yeah, he knows what.
If he knows he's never going to come to him, he's
Yeah.
predestined to not go to God.
So going back to this, that you think about, we have a choice, just like here. We have a choice. Once the bride said yes, it is considered what we would think an engagement or betrothal. And in ancient wedding customs, that betrothal or engagement period is different than today's mindset. Yeah. You think about what? Well, I was just going to say, because like in ancient times, sorry, I just got a tickle in my nose. It's just driving me nuts. That it's different. This engagement, we think about, somebody can ask you to marry it and you say yes, and then happens, and then you're like, okay, no, we break off the engagement. Okay. But during biblical times, if you said yes, if the bride says, yes, I'm going to marry you, you were already legally considered married.
To God.
Yeah. It was you, because if you think it was the same, if you violated that betrothal, it was considered the same as adultery. Okay. Think about this. Let's go over to Matthew and let's go Matthew chapter 1. Let's think about Yeshua. Matthew chapter 1. Matthew chapter 1. And let's go to verse 18. Here is how the birth of Yeshua the Mashiach took place. When his mother, Miriam, was engaged to Joseph, before they were married, she was found to be pregnant from the Ruach HaKodesh. Her husband-to-be, Joseph, was a man who did what was right, So he made plans to break the engagement quietly rather than to put her to public shame. Okay. So look at what he was going to do. Joseph, Yeshua's earthly father here, was going to put her away. Well, what does that mean? We say, oh, well, he was going to put her away. Well, quietly. We think, oh, well, what does that mean? They're just going to break up and that's all. No, put her away is a term that means divorce. He was going to divorce her quietly. What's that word quietly is, everybody's going to know you're divorced. It doesn't mean the same as quietly. It is, he's going to give her a divorce instead of doing what he had the right to do, which is stone her because she committed adultery. Well, how could she have committed adultery if she wasn't already married? Because it was legally married. If she said yes, at that point, she was considered legally married. And we know that, it is later that the angel appears to Joseph and tells him, know that this is through the Ruach HaKodesh. And then it says that Joseph takes her into his house and, as fully in marriage, so that he didn't divorce her then. But he legally could have went out and publicly had her stoned.
Right.
And he didn't, the angel of the Lord appeared to him because he was going to divorce her. He was going to end up divorcing her, even though they hadn't even had the marriage ceremony yet.
And that begs the question.
Mm-hmm. What?
How spiritual was Joseph?
How spiritual was Joseph? Yeah, to think about it.
Begs the question, if that's the case, then to God, even today, if you're a believer, does he look at the same if somebody, betroths, say, I want you to marry me? They say yes. Are you married? Are you married in God's sight then? That's what it said.
And have this.
And really, all the ceremonies we do go through the things we
through
do.
the courts.
It's just basically for tax
it's just to get
your
money.
name and know that's because
it was as you were God. Yep.
You according to this, you can be married.
And to think about, and and you think about how important this is to Yah. This is why I'm saying, even though what you said you were going to do it, that was a vow. Regardless if we haven't gone through the ceremony, you still made a vow.
Right.
And it is important. It is that important.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was sad.
So.
Yeah.
Joseph was he was a godly man, and to know that you had to really believe in Yah, and the angel to come down and said,
but I didn't go out and try to make it happen, or
you got to trust it. Yeah.
It's just like with Solomon, the angel of the Lord
appeared to him.
And these things happen repeatedly through the Torah of the angel of the Lord coming and talking to them.
Yeah, Terry's just talking about how how much faith you have to have that this angel of the Lord appeared to him, and to trust and believe that in a dream. Because how many of us have dreams? Is it really is it really just things in your brain? Yeah. Is it really things just in your brain firing whatever, you had too much soup or something before you went to bed? Or is it really from Yah? Okay, let me turn this around. So that.
Talking about dreams, if you don't think dreams are real, when I was, a teenager, wild as a buck, acting stupid, I had a dream one night, and I think I've told most of you, I don't know if and I dreamed it was a 2-story house. It was just as clear as a bell, 2-story house. And I was in the middle of each room, story of the house. You had an upper room and a bottom, like a basement or something. Well, God came to me. I didn't see him as God, but I guess it was an angel I was speaking to. And it says, this day, I want you to choose. Are you going up to the upper level to God? Or are you going down to the bottom level of hell? Choose this day which one. Choose. And I'm gonna tell you something. When I woke up the next morning, you talking about repenting and you know, I mean, you know, y'all sometimes has to get to you where it's in dreams or prayer, whatever. But that has never left me because that's what y'all choose. What's that? How's that sound familiar? Remember in the wilderness? Choose this day. You want the blessings, you want the cursings. You want Yah or you want the world. And so I've, you know, made many mistakes since then, but I chose Yah.
But that's, you know, just think about that. He had to have faith to really trust that dream. So, okay, so back to Exodus 19. And in the first part of those first verses there, oops, sorry, Exodus 19. We see Moses going up and down, you know, because Moses in first 8 verses, Moses went up the mountain. And then in verse 3, it's, you know, verse says he goes up. And then verse 7, he comes down to speak to the people. Okay. Now let's go to verse 9. Okay. And Yah said to Moshe, see, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud so that the people will be able to hear when I speak with you and also to trust in you forever. Moshe told Yah what the people had said. Well, if Yah's telling Moshe this, here he's speaking to him again. Moshe had to go back up and tell Yah what the people said. So we got, you know, in verse 3, you know, Moshe going down and then Moshe going up in verse 7. Moshe going up in verse 3 and verse 7, he came down. And then we see him going back up in verse 9. So, yeah, and he said he's getting some good cardio here. Yep. Okay. So let's see. Look. Yep. He's okay. Verse 10 says, and so Yah said to Moshe, go tell the people today, tomorrow, separate them for me by having them wash their clothing and prepare for the third day. For in the third day, Yah will come down on Mount Sinai before all the people. And you are to set limits for the people all around and say, be careful not to go up on the mountain or even touch its base. Whoever touches the mountain will surely be put to death. No hand is to touch him, for he must be stoned or shot by arrows, neither an animal or a human allowed to live. When the shofar sounds, they may go up on the mountain. And Moshe went down the mountain to the people and separated them for God, and they washed their clothing. So here we got him going up, going down, going up, going down. Because a lot of times we think, oh, he went up and he stayed up. And then that was it. No, he went up, he went down, he went up, he went down, he went up and down. Okay, so look at what he says here. Yah says, you know, they need to be consecrated, they're going to be set apart. And Yah's desiring for his bride. They said, yes, they're going to do this. He wants you to be pure. Go wash your clothes. You know, Yah's commanding them to wash their clothes. They're in the middle of the desert. Not a lot of, you know, think about, this is preparing for his coming. Just as the bride prepares for her wedding, she's going to change her clothes. She's going to put on this, you know, gown or whatever. In order for us to be ready for his coming, we need to be pure. And, you know, this got me to thinking about, you know, when we were living in Israel, I went to an Orthodox Jewish wedding there. Let me see if I can pull up that picture. And my friend Leah got married to Mordecai. Mordecai, yeah. Mordecai, Leah. And at their wedding, you know, in the traditional Orthodox wedding, the bride and groom are going to mikvah. They're going to have a, you know, what we think of a baptism. They're going to immerse in water before they get married. And so typically they're going to do that because what's happening? You are changing your status. You're now going to go from being, No, but right before the service, right before the service. That they would mikvah. Okay. And so I wanted to show you, of course, I don't have a picture of the mikvah. I wouldn't be there at the mikvah.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple of pictures I want to show you at the wedding because their ceremonies are completely different. The bride comes out and she's there in front of everybody before, she walks down the aisle, everybody sees her and has pictures or whatever. Okay. But I do want to show you, one is what's called the bedecking. Come on. There it comes up. Okay. So I'm going to share this picture. Give me just a second to go to my share screen. And I'll show you guys afterward. Just remind me and I'll put it up here so that way you can share. Up. Just a second. Okay, share. This is the bedecking. This is part of the ceremony where the bride is sitting over there after, and the women are on one side and the men are on the other. But here is Leah and there's Mordecai. And she's veiled. And it's called the bedecking because what's happening is he comes over before the actual ceremony takes place and he lifts up that veil and makes sure it's her. Why did they do that? Because of what happened with Rachel and Leah, that is part of the wedding ceremony that the groom is going to make sure that bride is his bride. They ain't gonna marry the wrong one. So, but that is the bedecking there. So, and then let me see. Okay, and I am going to share one more. Let me see if I can find this other picture. The other picture. That was the this is the other one I wanted to share that I thought was just really, really beautiful because this is something we don't typically see in our traditional ceremonies here. But this is Mark, her father, Leah's father, Guggenheim, and Susan, her mother, Guggenheim. Yeah. The Guggenheim, in New York. Yeah. No relation. Well, maybe distantly related. Art. Yeah. It's art place in New York. Okay. So here is Mark Guggenheim, and he is the father of the bride. And part of the ceremony is he comes over and he lays hands on his daughter and blesses her before the actual ceremony, which is, I thought, was really, really beautiful part of the ceremony. So that you can see that, so that's just a couple of pictures of a typical wedding today, but just so that you can see that. And think about, this is what Yah is doing with us. This is a wedding ceremony that is happening right here at Mount Sinai. And if you think in James chapter 4 and verse 8, James, we know, is Yeshua's brother. He says, come close to God and he will come close to you. Clean your hands, sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded people. And so, think about, what Yah is calling them to do here. You've already said yes, that you are going to come close. And he's saying, now, wash your clothes. I want you to, when you think about this correlation between Yah commanding them in Exodus to washing their garments and washing themselves and purifying themselves, it's a matter of signifying that our outward lives, our outward works, that we are cleansing before Yah, that we're cleansing our clothes and our hands are a picture that the work that Yah has done in our hearts is being cleansed, and that, Yah doesn't want to see in his bride double-mindedness. What is double-mindedness? That's, saying you've got divided loyalties, that, I'm part of the world or I'm this. Yeah, you're sitting on the fence. Yah saying, don't do that. Having six.
Who should go up to his holy mountain? Who should, those with clean hands and a pure heart? Same thing.
Yeah. So.
We actually do arrive at that.
Mm-hmm.
Is through the blood.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
but then since our hearts and all change,
How do you know that how does he know that you love him? By doing his commands. That's what I'm saying. But, and you know, a lot of times we've been taught that, oh, we've just got to say John 3:16 and that's it. And a lot of people say it and then they live like the devil, you know, and that's they live the same way. And it's not about that. It's you have to, that's why even what does it say in James that, you know, your faith without works, your faith without works is dead. Is dead. So that's saying if I believe, but I don't live that way, then my faith is dead. And James says, I'll show you my faith with my works. So you've got to, you know, you've got to do, it's all about action.
You always got faith first.
You have faith first, right?
You have faith, you come to grace. You know, and then
By faith, yep,
you
you believe.
process.
Yes.
It's a process.
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
consecrated.
You're being consecrated. Yeah. And so I wanted to go back at the beginning of Exodus 19, when we got the timing of this, I wanted to point out another thing. Because remember I said it was, you know, this was saying it was the third new moon. This is the third month that they are here, that this is happening. And it's been about a month and a half since they left Egypt. Think about what this time period means in Judaism. Okay. Or not only Judaism, but in the word. This is the time period from Passover to Shavuot, which is counting of the Omer. So during that time period, what do? It is the time period you're consecrating yourselves. They're preparing themselves to be a bride. And that is, you know, we think about, we miss that, but that's what's happening. What happened? They left Egypt. They went through a baptism. They went through the mikveh in the sea. And then after they come up on the other side, what happens? Now you're searching your heart. You're preparing yourself. You're getting rid of all that leaven in your heart so that you can walk out his commands and be his spotless bride. And that's, you know, it's a time of transformation. And, you know, Yah's taking the people who really were of slave minded, and he's uniting them and bringing them to this point, you know.
Those people who consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments. What is the consecrate? What is the Hebrew word for that?
Kadosh.
Huh?
Kadosh.
Kadosh. That is
Oh,
Set them apart.
Go to the
Yeah, he was asking about it.
today and tomorrow.
Yes.
What's he setting them apart from?
Well, what do? When you are setting yourselves apart, then you aren't becoming anything unclean. You're not touching anything unclean. And, you know, especially with the men here, they're setting themselves apart so they wouldn't be with their wives during that time period because, yeah. So here is, you know, it's like, okay, you're going to set yourselves apart. You're going to make sure these 3 days that you are making sure nothing unclean is coming around you. You are not defiling yourself. You're not, because you're getting ready to go into Yah's presence. You are. All the people were to go up to the mountain. Remember?
Oh, really?
Yeah. At first, because remember, he says all of them, and the people said, no, we don't want to hear from Yah. He won't let you go. Yeah, they got afraid. Yeah, praise it. Yeah. Yeah. So they were all they were all supposed to go up to the mountain, and they were going to be a kingdom of priests. Well, you think about it. We think about these movies. Yeah. I mean, not only that, we think about how bad thunder and lightning. I'd be scared. I think I'd be scared.
If he says he wants to
Yeah.
talk with people,
Yeah.
I probably have to.
I don't know, with all those thunders and lightnings and it's something else. This is something I don't know how many times I've read this And
Oh,
I've never seen this verse. Look at verse 13
well,
and
19.
1913.
yeah.
I've read this and I never saw this. Okay. And this is one of those things, 13 and 14. I think I had to unlearn from what I've seen in movies in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because, when I read this, in my mind, I always thought that lightning's going to come down from Yah and that he's going to strike the people dead, just like we see in the Indiana Jones movie, where you touch the ark and that the person would die here. But that's not what it says here. Notice, okay, the person that's going to touch the border or whatever, that they would die. But how do they die?
Stone.
They would be stoned. Well, who's going to stone them? Is Yah going to throw stones at them?
Yeah, he got it all. Whoever not go to the mountain, touch the border, whoever touches the mountain, shall surely be put to death.
So the people had to stone them or shoot them with arrows if they touched that mountain. I always thought that Yah's the one that's, what I'm saying, that's doing, that's sending lightning to them. But to me, when I'm looking at it now, it's like, oh my gosh, the rest of the people are going to have to do that.
And when it says no, who is the him there?
Which so 14 or 13.
Moshe.
No hand is to touch him. I guess the man that's actually done that. You're going to stone him. Yeah, the man who touched on the border. Yeah. If he, yeah, because he's unclean. He was unclean and he did something he shouldn't have been done. So
what if they were consecrated and washed?
But he did it before Yah, he broke Yah's command. Yep. So think about that person is paying.
They shall come up to the mountain.
What did you say? To read that verse again. He just read it. When the ram's horn.
They shall come up to the mountain.
Okay, so when did the people go up to the mountain? When the shofar blast. When do we go up to meet Yeshua in the air? 1 Thessalonians 4:16. Okay, 1 Thessalonians 4:16.
Wow.
It says, "For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a rousing cry."
Wow.
Or a loud shout, or what is that in Hebrew? And a call from one of the ruling angels, and with the God shofar, and those who died and united with Messiah will be the first to rise. Okay. And then in verse 17, it says, and then who are still left alive will be caught up to meet him in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air. Thus we will always be united. Alive during that time. So it's a similar experience, to what's happening at Mount Sinai, that when he comes down, yeah, justice went. The wicked died, yeah.
The wicked are going to die before we go up.
Okay. That's a whole nother issue.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into that because that is a whole other thing. He was just talking about the timeline of events, and I'm not going to touch that right now because we will be here all day for that one. But so we'll ask that one later. So, but what I was talking about is that this experience is similar. And you think about, when does the shofar blow? When do they blow the shofars? When is the shofar blown that when Yeshua is coming back? When is it blown? Yom Teruah, okay? Which is the day of blow. That's what it means. The day of blowing of the shofars. The day, okay? Which we don't know when that's happened. That is the one season. We know the season, but we don't know when that's going to happen. Why don't we?
A season can be days, weeks, months.
Right.
So that's going to be the season.
We don't, he's just talking about, we know the season, but we won't know the day when that happens. And why don't we know when that happens? Why? Why won't we know when that day happens?
Nobody knows.
Because he said it.
Season and night.
Nobody knows but the Father, but that, and that is the one holiday that Yah commands that happens on a new moon. Do we know exactly when the new moon's going to happen?
We know one of the two.
We know one of the days, but we know the season, but we don't know the exact date. And we don't definitely know.
What I'm gonna say right now, I'm gonna get people tore up a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Why did Yeshua not know the time of day? Because he is God. Well, why didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm just,
Go ahead, say it again.
I'm just saying, why again didn't Yeshua know the time of the day? Because he's God. Does anybody know? Has anybody got an opinion about that?
No.
So, you know, that's always been a question of mine, because I really don't know for sure. Even
He was
though
in the flesh.
God,
So,
he was still man.
yeah.
He was still in a fleshly
And he says
body.
only the Father
Is
knows.
it
So.
because he was in that fleshly body? Was that the reason?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he was just saying, is it because he was in the fleshly
it's
body
still
that he
God.
didn't
It's
have
still
all of
God,
the
though.
knowledge? The flesh couldn't encompass all of the knowledge that Yah has.
Yeah. I mean, because
The things of Father, yeah.
Yeah.
But if they are one, then they should be one mind. So then again, why? And that's too, you know, that's another question. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
When he was here on earth, he was God.
Yeah.
But he didn't have all the power that the Father had.
Well, because why? You know, and he would, Jack was just saying, you know, when Yeshua was here on earth, he was God, but he didn't have all of the power of the Father. Why? Because he's in flesh.
Mhm.
He is in flesh, and we are hindered by. No, but still he is in flesh, and it says, you know, flesh cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven. You know, people are like, oh, you know, when you go up, that's why, you know, I think that it's about it is more, he is light, he is spirit. And I mean, even, and this was a whole touch, you know, the whole teaching we did before on the light is that your blood is basically light.
Yeah.
It is light slowed down. If you slow down light, the speed of light, it becomes what? Plasma. What's your blood? Plasma. So you have to link it here.
But yes.
When he was here,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jack was saying, you know, Yeshua just said, you know, whatever the Father teaches, that's what he only does the Father's will. Okay, let me keep going. Think about the shofar sounding, and I wanted to go to the book of Joel. In Joel chapter 2. Joel chapter 2 talks about the day of the Lord, the day of Yeshua's return, or Yah's return, because remember it says Yah here. Okay. In Joel chapter 2 in verse 1.
That's another.
Because whose foot stands on the Mount of Olives?
That's another.
In Zechariah it says Yah. Okay. Blow the shofar in Zion. Sound an alarm on my holy mountain. Let all living in the land tremble, for the day of Yah is coming. It is upon us. A day of darkness and gloom. What was happening on Mount Sinai? The darkness and clouds and thick fog and a great mighty horde is spreading like blackness over the mountains. There's never been anything like it, nor will there ever be again, not even all the years or after many generations. So, you know, to think about here, we've got this just when Yeshua is coming, just when Yah is coming here, that you're going to have that darkness, the sound of the shofar and a cloud, just like at Mount Sinai. And, you know, that shofar is going to be so loud that when Yeshua returns, like we read in Thessalonians, that the dead are going to come up out of the graves. I mean, can you imagine hearing the shofar so loud? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, can you imagine though, that hearing a sound so loud that the dead's going to come up out of the ground?
Like Terry said, that's what happened. She went down,
Yeah, when you
and
shoot.
they went.
Yeah. Yep. So, yep. But then did everybody else that died, or are they asleep in the ground? So,
Well,
okay. So let's keep going. Exodus 19. And I'm going to go down to verse 17. And Moshe brought the people out of the camp to meet Elohim, and they stood at the base of the mountain. And Mount Sinai was enveloped in smoke because Yah descended on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke from a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. Can you imagine if Steven Spielberg, if Steven Spielberg was able to really make this happen? Think about it. It's so black. This mountain looks like smoke, fire's coming from it, and then it's shaking, this earthquake. And then you hear this loud shofar, and it's growing louder and louder and louder. And then you hear Moses speaking, and Yah is answering him with this voice. Yeah, that can be heard. And it says Yah came down onto Mount Sinai on the top of the mountain, and then Yah called to Moshe to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up. And so Moshe was down, and now he's going up again. In verse 21, and Yah said to Moshe, go down and warn the people not to force their way through to Yah to see him. If they do, many of them will perish. Even the Kohanim who are allowed to approach Yah must keep themselves holy, otherwise Yah may break out against them. And Moshe said to Yah, the people can't come up to Mount Sinai because you ordered us to set limits around the mountain and to separate it. But Yah answered him, go get down and then come back up, you and Aaron with you, but don't let the Kohanim and the people force their way through to come up to Yah, or he will break out against them. And so Moshe went down and he tells the people, so
they wanted to go.
at first, and then, but then remember, what happens? They're like, no,
right.
Moses.
Just
They always went up and saw the feet.
Yeah. Okay. So let's.
Think about it.
Okay, so here's another part. Let's go to chapter 20. So we keep going, and this is where we get to the 10 Commandments, okay, which actually is Aseret HaDevarim, or 10 words, okay, in Hebrew. And this is the wedding contract. This is the wedding contract. This is where in the Catholic Church, the numbering of these are different than in Hebraic thought, or even in Protestant. Okay. And I'm going to look at a couple of different things here with it. So first of all, we talk about the 2 tablets, but what's interesting about the first 5 commands, and this is just one thing that I noticed, that in verse 2, the first command says, I am Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh Yahweh Elohecha. Okay, so I am Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim. Okay, and then in verse 3, he says, for I am Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohecha. In verse 7, I am Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohecha. Okay, in the first 5 commands, he uses I am Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh, your Elohim. Okay, but when we get to the other commands, the final 5, we don't see him say Yad-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohecha in those. And when you look at those commands, those are all more negative commands. Okay, so that's just one thing that I noticed. Okay. Another thing is, we'll talk about this, that in many places people say, well, we only follow the 10 commands and all the others no longer apply. But we got to remember, I did that in one Parsha. I'll have to go back and look. I don't remember which one it was now, where I gave you the link on 613.org. 613.org, and I'll link it in the video too if you wanted to go there. That actually gives you the 2 commands to love Yah and to love your neighbor as yourself. And then off those 2 commands, it branches off all the 613 commands, and you can see how each one of them points back to one of the 2. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. These 2. Yeah, 2. Yep.
All 613 is not for everybody.
Right. Exactly. When you think about
But
it,
still,
it
it goes back to
Yeah.
the 10 2. And
Right.
still was one, he said,
yeah.
everything could be wrapped up in these 2.
Yeah, and he made the point of, well, people said, well, are you doing all 613? No, because not all 613 apply to you. Some of those about being a woman aren't going to apply to Eddie because he's not a woman, and the one, some apply to the priest, some are planning and live in the land or not. Yeah, so not all of those. It doesn't mean that you pick and choose. It just means that there are some of those that Yah isn't speaking to you about. Isn't required of you, but it's still required. It's just not required of you. And 2, and here's just another verse I like to point out is in Malachi chapter 2. In verse 9, it's talking about the corruption of the priesthood. Well, I'll go back to verse 8. It says that, but you have turned away from the path and you've caused many to fail in the law or the Torah. You corrupted the covenant of Levi, says Yah Zevaot. Therefore, I have in turn made you contemptible and vile before all the people, because what did they do? You did not keep my ways, but were partial in applying the Torah. So what were they doing? They're picking and choosing which ones you want to follow. And that's what we can't do. We have to, he tells us, you do my words. You can't pick and choose and do the ones that you like, and the ones you don't like, don't do. So, okay, so let's look at these commands. The first commandment is one of those that I said, like the numbering's different. Very first commandment is, I am Yadeh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay, because
that's
how we distinguish. Who are you going to worship?
Yeah,
you got to know who that is.
About
God or Lord. Yeah.
Israel.
Well, when you talk about, because you ask people, this was something, because, when I taught 6th grade ancient civilizations, we got to teach religions, and I taught ancient religions, and I taught, Buddhism and Taoism and Christianity and Islam, and we compared and looked at these different ones. And one of the questions I would ask the kids is, okay, what's God's name? Because in Proverbs it says, yeah, and they would say God, and I'm like, but it says, it says, surely you know his name and his son's name. So, and you think about, God is not a name. God is a title, just like Lord is a title. So you can be talking to somebody and I'll bring this one up because a lot of people I know love this song, but My Sweet Lord, George Harrison, My Sweet Lord. And they're singing, thinking, oh, this is a Christian song. And I'm sitting there going, Hare Krishna. He's talking about Hare Krishna. He ain't talking about Jesus or God. He's talking about Hare Krishna. And that's the thing. People don't realize it. They think, oh, it's got the word Lord in there.
That is very popular amongst the Christian society. She's not singing about God. She's singing about Allah.
Oh, yeah.
Christians have embraced that.
Yeah. Terry was just talking about, there's a very popular Christian lady now that is singing, or she's not a Christian. She's singing about Lord or whatever, and it is actually Allah that she's singing about. But the Christian community has embraced this song, thinking that it's about God, about the God that they worship. So yeah, about it. So okay, so the very first, yeah.
said on the teaching,
Mhm.
I don't know what they are called in the Islamic world, the teachers. And he was
Imams?
basically telling everybody
Mhm.
in that meeting that the God of Allah, the God of Christians, and the God of the Catholics, and, you know, they're all the same. It's one God.
Yeah.
It's all.
Yeah.
It's one God. And, you know, it's like, okay, it can't be that way because it is the Lord God who brought them out of Egypt. And there's
Yeah.
only one God who has brought anybody out of Egypt.
And what
Yeah.
they say, Shema, Israel, the Lord
Yeah, it's amazing.
God.
And he's just talking about
Yeah.
that, there's actually like the
God
imams and
of
stuff, they're
Israel.
talking about that there's only one God and that it's Allah, and then it's not, it's not about the one who brought out Egypt. Yeah.
Well, that's what.
Well,
Yeah.
even in Islam, when you look at Islam,
In the local sense,
Yeah.
there are many gods.
Yeah, Oprah says there's many ways to God, which-
There's one.
and
that
we
you
don't,
pray.
we don't agree with that. But when you think about, there's not many ways to God, but when you think about even in Islam that they're, sorry, that they're about, it is the God of Abraham, not Isaac, but Ishmael.
Yeah.
And even like, was it Eid al-Adha? Eid al-Adha, is where the sacrifice of, or is it Eid al-Fitr? I can't remember right now. Either Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha. I think it's Eid al-Adha is the one that they believe that Abraham went to sacrifice,
Yeah.
not Ishmael, not Isaac, but Ishmael. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, and that's what they teach. Okay. So, and then one of the things I wanted to think about here, and I just did a quick search. Actually, it is that Muslim song is on the top gospel Billboard chart. It's one of the top 4 songs on the gospel Billboard. So,
Well,
okay.
And what's the name of it?
I don't know what the name of it is. I just very quickly Googled and says Muslim song worshiping Allah makes Christian top gospel for Billboard.
Okay.
right.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at it because I just very quickly
Right.
So, I don't know if this one is. I didn't go into the links. Okay. So anyway, that is the first command is, actually knowing who you have your faith in. And, there is a Rabbi Noah Weinberg who said that faith and trust are not separate. Emunah, faith, requires us to believe, but it is trust or bitahon that actually means that we're applying that belief into practice. And you think about, Yah doesn't start here with the command saying, oh, I'm the God who created the heavens and earth. Look at how he starts with the connection to the children of Israel. He starts with the command saying, I'm the one who brought you out of Egypt. I'm the one who brought you out of slavery. He's making the relationship personal, not doing it to the creation of the world. Okay, then we get to the second command, which is you're to have no other gods before me. You're not to make yourselves a carved image of any kind, of any representation on anything in heaven above or the earth beneath or in the water below the shoreline. You are not to bow down to them or to serve them, for I am Yed-Heh-Bab-Heh, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of their parents to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but displaying grace to the 1000th generation of those who love me and obey my mitzvot. Okay, and the 3rd commandment, you are not to use lightly the name of Yah your Elohim, because Yah will not leave unpunished someone who uses his name lightly, or, in other versions it says in vain. That Hebrew word for vain or lightly is actually the word shav, which means emptiness, vanity, lying, falsehood, or worthless. And that's the same word that's used in Exodus chapter 23 in verse 1, where it says you are not to repeat false rumors or join hands with the wicked by offering perjured testimony. And, so people ask, well, what does it mean by taking the Lord's name in vain here? And one of it is, if you look at that, this is that we're not, to make his name empty, of have no value. We're not to take his name and say it's something that it isn't.
Right.
Okay. Because there's power in his name. And that, because the word repeatedly tells us to call on his name. Okay. That's just one thing. Okay. The fourth command, remember the Sabbath day to set it apart for Elohim. You are to have 6 days to labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is a Shabbat for Yah, your Elohim. On it, you're not to do any kind of work, not you, not your son, your daughter, not your male or female slave, not your livestock, not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property. For 6 days, Yah made heaven and earth, the sea and everything in them, but on the seventh day he rested. This is why Yah blessed the Shabbat and separated it for himself. So, yeah. Okay. What was the name of it? Oh, the person that sang that song is Nori, and it's called Change in Your Name.
No.
Okay.
Nori. Mm-hmm. Okay. The fifth command is honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you. And the sixth command is do not murder, not kill, do not murder, because there is a difference. The seventh command, do not commit adultery. 8, do not steal. 9, do not give false evidence against your neighbor. And 10, do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male or female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, most believe that, Yah wrote on one of the tablets the first 5, and then on the second tablet, the 6 through 10. And when you line them up, 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10, and you look at them parallel to each other, like I'm the Lord your God is 1. And then you look at 6 is you shouldn't murder. There's a connection between those. And there's a midrash that says, the first command and the sixth command, that I'm the Lord your God and you should not murder, that every human is created by Yah, and Adam was created in his image. And so when we murder, we're basically doing an affront to Yah. And so that one command 1 and 6 are going together. This is what they say. And then the second command, that you should have no other gods before him. And the seventh command, you should not commit adultery, because what is idolatry and adultery are linked together. Because basically, when you are worshiping other gods, you're committing adultery to Yah. Mm-hmm. So idolatry and adultery are the same. And the third command, you should not take the name of the Lord in vain, and you shall not steal. They say that a person may feel that stealing is only between him and the victim, but it's also a crime against God, whose name is you're ultimately taking falsely. Because if you're stealing, you're representing Yah, and that you're making his name seem false, like he is a thief and a liar. The fourth command and the ninth command, remember the Sabbath day, and you shall not bear false witness, because through keeping the Shabbat, we're testifying of Yah, and that he created the world in 6 days, and they rested on the seventh. And that if you disregard Shabbat, it's just like you're bearing false witness against Yah. So, and then the fifth command and the 10th command, honor your father and mother, and you shall not covet your neighbor. And they're saying here that the jealousy, or, coveting here, and honoring your parents, tell us that when you're lusting after something that is not yours, you're ultimately giving birth to a child. It's like giving birth to a child that's cursing their parents. That when you're doing something that you're basically like dishonoring your family when you're doing that. So now here's something else. And I actually put the chart here in my notes, and I wanted to link this because if you go to Exodus chapter 20 and mark Exodus chapter 20 in your Bible and put your hand there and go there. Okay. Exodus chapter 20. Okay, listen to me. Sorry. Exodus chapter 20. Okay. And let's go to Deuteronomy. Hold your hand there, and I want you to go over to Deuteronomy 5. Because I want to look at a couple of differences here. Both of these are places that give us the 10 Commandments. And here is a question. If Yah is speaking the 10 Commandments or the words directly to Moses, wouldn't we expect them to be the same in both places? But they're not. So when we look at these and you're comparing in Exodus chapter 20 and you look at Deuteronomy 5, there's some subtle differences here. If we go to verse, it depends on which version you're reading, verse 8 about the fourth command about remember the Sabbath day to keep it set apart for God. I'm reading in Exodus chapter 20 first. Okay. So remember the Sabbath day to keep it set apart for God. You're to have 6 days to labor and to do all your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat for Yah, your Elohim. On it, you are not to do any kind of work, not you, not your son or your daughter, not your male or female slave, not your livestock, not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates of your property. For in 6 days, Yah made heaven and earth, the sea and everything in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. This is why Yah blessed this day, Shabbat, and he separated for himself. But if we go over to Deuteronomy, it says not remember, but observe. And there are two different words in Hebrew. Remember is zakar, and observe is shamar. So shamar is like guard, okay? The day of Shabbat, to set it apart as holy as to Yah, your Elohim ordered you to do. For 6 days, you are labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat for Yah, your Elohim, and on it you're not to do any kind of work. You, your son, your daughter, not your male or female slave. And in here it adds not your ox or your donkey or any of your other livestock, and not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property, so that your male and female servants can rest just as you did. Now, look at the reason why it says here. For you are to remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Yah, your Elohim, brought you out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, Yah, your Elohim, has ordered you to keep the day of Shabbat. So in Deuteronomy, what was the why of keeping Shabbat? Because they were brought out of Egypt. But then look at Exodus. Why is the why of Shabbat there? Because it was the seventh day of creation. But they're two different. I mean, this is the same giving of the 10 commands, but they have two different reasons. Okay. Now, if we go to the fifth command, which in Exodus it says to honor your father and mother in verse 12, and that you may live long in the land which Yah your Elohim is giving you. But in Deuteronomy, it says in verse 16, honor your father and mother as Yah your Elohim ordered you to do, so that you will live long. But it also says, and have things go well with you in the land that Yah is giving you. So it adds something there. In the land, okay? And we go to the 10th command. In the 10th command in Exodus, it says, do not covet your neighbor's house, and don't covet your neighbor's wife, his male and female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. But in Deuteronomy, it says in the reverse order, don't covet your neighbor's wife, and don't covet your neighbor's house, his field, which it added, his male and female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. So the order is reversed in the 10th one, and they added a field. And so the question is, so these differences, shouldn't they be the same? Yeah, shouldn't the commandments be the same? You would think that.
I guarantee it. One of them is correct for sure.
One of them is correct for sure. The question comes to which one or what.
You know what I say?
Yeah, I know what you say. You say to hold the Deuteronomy. Okay. And so when we think about, when I started looking at this and I was like, wait a minute, they're slightly different. And I started looking up, well, why are they different? What is it in the Hebrew? What do they say about it? And, the Talmud and the Midrash say that, according to the Shabbat one, that this is what they say. They say that the parallel here to remember, zakar, and to shamar, to keep or observe, were actually both said by God and heard simultaneously. But for whatever reason, remember is recorded in Exodus, and the keep or observe was recorded in Deuteronomy. And they say that the commentaries explain the difference can be understood by taking into account the most obvious difference is between Torah and Deuteronomy is that they say, well, Deuteronomy is Moses' own words of what occurred. And the Exodus is what actually God said himself, is what they say.
When Yah spoke to Adam in the garden, what did he tell them to do? What did he tell him to do about the garden?
Guard it. He told them they are smart. Mm-hmm.
So I would think that would be.
You would think that would, okay. So Terry's saying that he
Remember.
said, yeah, he's
Because
thinking
remember,
like
something
yeah.
The shamar is something that is physical.
It's an action. Yeah. So Terry's saying that he would hold to the one that's saying shamar, which would be Deuteronomy. Now, what's interesting too is to think about, these differences. They're saying, for their reasoning, they're saying, oh, well, Moses's words were all Deuteronomy, and that God really spoke what was in Exodus and Genesis and those, and that was God's words. Okay. That's what they say. And for those who've been with us a while, if you haven't been with us a while, you may not have heard this, but we previously taught on the difference between the books of the Bible of the Torah and about some of the differences there. And this is what Eddie keeps bringing up and I just want to go to one example. Okay, so let's go to last week's portion because there was something in last week's portion. In Exodus chapter 16 and verse 33. And it's talking about the manna. And it says, Moshe said to Aaron, take a jar and put in it 2 quarts of manna and set it aside for Yah to be kept through all your generations, just as Yah ordered Moshe. And Aaron set it aside before the testimony to be kept. So this is talking about when the manna came down, they went out, they collected the manna, they ate the manna, and here was it. This is what they were doing. Did they know how long they're going to be in the wilderness? No. Does God tell them anywhere that you're going to be wander in the wilderness for this man? No. But look at the next verse. The people of Israel ate manna for 40 years. How did they know they were going to eat manna for 40 years? They were just given the manna to eat. How did they know it was going to be 40 years that they were going to eat it? There's nowhere it says that you're going to eat it for 40 years. But that was just one thing that, there are other occurrences that we talked about before. Yeah, they were supposed to go. Yes. So, yep, they definitely would. And there are other occurrences that we can see through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers that there are certain places that are called by a name that didn't even exist then. That didn't exist until later. Okay. But we see it being called that during that time. And it suggests that someone else is actually writing those at a later time because of what it's called by. Okay. Yeah. Now, and I mentioned this when we did the study on the different books, is that when you look at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, it always says, and God spoke to Moshe. And God spoke to Moshe, and he did this, he did that. It does not say, if God spoke to you and you're writing it down, you're going to say, God spoke to me, and he said, you know, he's going to be first person. When you look at Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, it's written in third person, meaning somebody else is telling the story of what God said to Moshe.
Yeah.
But when you look at Deuteronomy, it says, God said to me, and it's written in first person.
Yeah.
This is why Eddie keeps saying, because he's been here, that, and
Wrote
but some of
some of the books of the Torah.
but some of that was written down after Aaron's died.
Okay.
Because how did Moses write about his own death? Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, that's another thing. Moses wrote down about his own death. If he wrote all of it, you know, and that's just, you know, that's just something to throw out there. And it's not saying that, it is just, okay, it's not saying, because, you know, there's going to be the diehardists that say Moses wrote, you know, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Okay. There are some who will say that. But then when you start really looking at it, some of that happens after Moses dies, and he could not have written some of that.
Right.
Okay. And then he wrote some of it in third person, but then he wrote Deuteronomy in first person. Okay. And then we went through the whole thing about Josiah finding whatever. And then there are some big things. Yeah. And then the scroll. Yeah. And how did they know that they were doing wrong? Because when you start looking at certain commands, you would think that loving the Lord your God is going to be found in Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It ain't found in any of those. It's found in Deuteronomy.
Oh.
The commands about the king making a copy of the Torah, writing it for himself, how he's supposed to live and not acquire all these wives. It's not found in any other book but Deuteronomy.
Mm.
You know, that's just a couple of them. So when you think about when Josiah and then find the scroll and that were lost, they lost the Torah.
Yeah.
Well,
but
they had, I believe, the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers that they lost or hid. And then when he found that, because what did he do? He immediately started mourning, because he realized as a king, there are things that we're not doing that we should be doing. Because there are a lot of commands that are only written in Deuteronomy that weren't written in the other books. So, or explain. Okay. So with that, I'm not saying that they don't, you know, have present. It's more like the, you know, when we get to the Brit Hadashah, we think about the writings of Paul and when the writings of James, you know, we hold them up as God's words, but they were men writing about what they saw. They may have been inspired by Yah, but, you know, is that the same as God's own word?
You know, where it was Paul or whoever it was, they were actually writing down the answer to questions that came from them, that came from other churches. We don't even know sometimes. I mean, yeah, right. We don't even know sometimes what the question was.
We don't have the answer. Yeah.
We don't even know sometimes what the question was.
So, you know, I'm not disputing the Torah.
Right.
I believe that. Yeah. He knew that. Yeah.
How this was supposed to come out.
Right.
Again,
and so, and that's like, I think it's, yeah. And I think it is, you know, the same where, you know, we say that it has value, it is aspired, but when there is a contradiction, you've got to go to the Torah. And if there's a contradiction in the Torah, then which one do you hold with? And then I tend to go with Moses's first person account, like Eddie said. That, and when you think about, you know,
or do you take an account in the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament, that what Yeshua was on words?
Yeah, what Yeshua was on words. Yeah, over what Paul says. Yeah, do you take Yeshua's own words over what Paul says? So,
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. To me, that's precedent
right,
that
That
Yeshua,
does-
Jesus himself said this.
right.
So I take
Um,
precedent for that.
And one last thing.
If you look at this here, it's
Mhm.
the first verse, now he spoke all these words saying.
Yes,
Yes.
And then he gave them the commandments.
right.
And verse 4, you're always speaking to Moses.
Mhm.
Correct.
And you go down to verse 6, he was telling them about the commandments.
Yeah.
No, Moses telling them about the commandments.
Right.
Mhm. So two, I wanted to look at the last verse. I just want to point out right here, and this is just something because in Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 12, talking about the Torah or the commands, it says, it isn't in the sky so that you needed to ask who's going to go up to the sky and bring it to us. So think about, the commands aren't up there that we need somebody to bring it to us and make us hear it so that we can obey it. And it says, likewise, it isn't beyond the sea that we need to ask who's going to cross the sea for us to bring it to us so that we can hear it, so to obey. And then he says, on the contrary, the word is very close to you. It's in your mouth and even in your heart. Therefore, you can do it. So, a lot of people say, well, you can't do the word. You can't do it. It's too hard for you. But here he even tells us himself, it's not too hard for us. We can do it. The problem is, people have added to and made things too hard. And that's not what it should be. So with that said, I guess we will go ahead and end right here. And questions or anything? You guys have any questions or? Everybody's just had so.
Last week,
Mhm.
one word, right before, where Amalek fought with Israel.
Yeah.
What incited them to think to attack Israel? I mean, Israel was a large group of people.
Yeah.
What? I mean, I'm reading that and I'm thinking, water.
Why are they attacking?
Why
Yeah.
are they attacking? There's no other reason here
Yeah.
other than water.
Yeah. And then Amalek is just, when you think about, he even says that spirit of Amalek is going to be fought for,
Over the
over
land.
the years and years. I mean, over the generations, he's going to fight with them forever.
There was no water.
Yeah.
So y'all brought about all this water. Well, in a desert land, what is the most
Important thing is water. Yeah. And then two, there is a midrash that goes that Yitro and Amalek both heard of what Yah did for the children of Israel in Egypt and coming out of Egypt, and that they both responded differently. That Amalek went in and attacked them, and Yitro came in and became a part of it.
Yeah.
So,
Very good. Okay.
okay.
Amen.
So let's go
Everybody
ahead
that wants to get ready, hit Yah with the blessing of Yah. Tell me when you're ready.
Ready.
You're ready.
over here. Yep.
Yeberekaka Yahava Berishmereha Yair Yahabanava Eleka Behuneka Yisa Yahava Pinameleka Vayeshem Leka Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you peace. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, Sar Shalom. Go in peace. Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom.